All right, let's talk about one of West Africa's most iconic dishes, Ghanaian Jollof Rice. But forget a simple cooking lesson. We're going way deeper. We're going to unpack the history, the culture, and all that fierce pride that's literally cooked into every single grain. A masterpiece. Yeah, that's exactly right. In Ghana, this dish is a huge deal. It's the centerpiece for celebrations, for big family get-togethers, and for Ghanaians living anywhere in the world, it's that comforting taste of home. It's so much more than just food. It's a statement. And that brings us to the Jollof Wars. Now, this is a friendly rivalry, mostly, but it is incredibly passionate, mainly with Nigeria, and it all comes down to one simple question. Who makes the best jollof? I mean, this debate just rages on social media, in kitchens, everywhere, turning this humble rice dish into a symbol of national pride. So, to really get why a rivalry can be this intense over a plate of rice, you gotta look beyond the food itself. Let's dive into the cultural side of things. What is it about jollof that gets people so fired up? A culinary showdown? Oh, absolutely. The whole Ghana versus Nigeria jollof thing is legendary. I mean, at their core, they're both one-pot rice dishes with a tomato sauce, right? But it's those little differences that really fuel the fire. This isn't just about what tastes better. It's about tradition, technique, and a whole lot of pride. Okay, so let's break down the main distinctions, because this is where it gets interesting. With Ghanaian jollof, you're typically looking at a fragrant rice, something like jasmine. That gives it a slightly softer texture and this amazing aroma. The spice profile is often more aromatic, maybe with some nutmeg and bay leaf. Now, Nigerian jollof, that often uses long-grain parboiled rice, so the grains stay really firm and separate. And it's famous for that signature smoky flavor, which sometimes comes from being cooked over an open fire. Two very different approaches. So, where did this all even come from? Well, the granddaddy of jollof is a dish called tibodien. It comes from the old Wolof Empire, which is basically where Senegal and Gambia are today. It was this hearty meal of fish, rice, and veggies. And as people and goods started moving up and down the West African coast, the recipe traveled with them. It kept changing, adapting to whatever ingredients people had, until it evolved into the different versions we know and love and argue about today. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the actual architecture of the dish. At its core, Ghanaian jollof really stands on two pillars: a perfectly made stew and the right kind of rice. Seriously, if you mess up either one of those, the whole thing just kind of falls apart. Okay, the stew. This is everything. It's the mother sauce, the foundation. We're talking a rich, vibrant blend of fresh tomatoes and tomato paste for that deep, beautiful red color. Then you've got that sharp, aromatic punch from onions, garlic, and ginger, a little sweetness from red bell peppers, and of course that essential, creeping heat from Scotch bonnets. This isn't just a base, you guys. It's the soul of the dish. And building that stew, it's all about patience. You just can't rush it. You start by softening the onions, right? Then you build the flavor, frying up your blended ginger and garlic. Now, here's a super important step. You gotta fry that tomato paste. It cooks out that raw, kind of tinny taste and makes it so much deeper and sweeter. Finally, you pour in the fresh tomato blend and just let it simmer, maybe for 20 minutes, maybe longer, until you see the oil naturally separate and rise to the top. That's how you know. That's the sign your stew is ready. So, does the type of rice really matter? Let me tell you, yes. 100% yes. The grain you pick completely changes the texture and the smell of the final dish. It is absolutely non-negotiable. If you want that authentic Ghanaian experience, jasmine rice is your go-to. Its fragrance is a huge part of the dish, and it cooks up soft, but not mushy. It's just perfect for soaking up all of that stew. What you want to avoid is standard basmati. It's a little too delicate and can break apart, or just regular long-grain rice that's not parboiled, because that can turn into a sticky, clumpy mess real fast. All right, here are two little details that can totally make or break your jollof. First, the oil. A lot of people might just grab olive oil, but its flavor is way too strong for this. You need a neutral vegetable oil for that authentic taste. And second, wash your rice. I mean, really wash it. Rinsing until the water runs clear gets rid of all that extra starch on the surface, which is the #1 enemy of fluffy, separate grains of rice. Okay, so we've got our foundation, the stew and the rice. Now let's talk about the soul of the flavor. These are the specific spices that give the dish its signature smell and taste. And trust me, these aren't just any old flavorings. They are like the fingerprint of Ghanaian cuisine. It's what makes it instantly different from its neighbors. First up, meet huentia, also known as grains of salim. These are these long, dark pods, and they are an absolute flavor powerhouse. They've got this amazing, smoky, musky, kind of peppery thing going on. Usually just toss them into the stew whole and then fish them out before you serve it. A little goes a long, long way, but that background smokiness, it's totally unmistakable. And this is not your average nutmeg that you'd put in a Christmas cookie. No way. Calabash nutmeg, or huediaba, is so much more intense. It's got this warm, nutty flavor with these woody notes that adds this incredible depth to savory food. You actually have to roast it and crack the shell open to get to the seed, and then you grate that into the stew. And then there's shito. Now, you can serve this on the side as a condiment, but the pros, they often add a spoonful right into the stew itself. It's this spicy, dark, oily sauce made from dried seafood and hot peppers, and what it brings to the party is this deep layer of funky umami and a serious kick of heat. It is just deeply and unmistakably Ghanaian. Okay, so we've covered the ingredients, we've got the stew, the rice, the spices, but the final, most sought-after element of a perfect Ghanaian jollof, that's all in the technique. This, my friends, is where the real magic happens. This right here is the holy grail for any jollof lover. How do you get that signature smoky flavor, that almost barbecued smell that just fills the whole dish? And I'm not talking about liquid smoke or any fake shortcuts. This is a flavor that comes from the cooking process itself. The secret has a name. It's called kanzo, or bottom pot. This is the layer of rice at the very bottom of the pot that gets all toasty and caramelized and a little crispy. Now, get this. It's not a mistake. For a lot of people, this is the best part of the whole dish. The flavor is super concentrated down there, and it's what fills the entire pot with that signature smoky aroma. And here's how you do it. You cook the rice on a nice, gentle heat until it's almost done. Then, for just the last few minutes, you crank that heat up high. And the number one rule here is do not stir. You have to let that bottom layer sit on the heat so it can toast up and form that delicious crust. Look, it's a fine line between perfectly smoky and, well, burnt. But when you nail it, the result is just spectacular. So after all that careful prep, the patient simmering, that final smoky finish, what you're left with is so much more than just a meal. What you really have is a direct connection to Ghanaian culture. And jollof almost never travels alone, right? The classic pairings are just as important as the rice. Crispy fried chicken is pretty much a must for a lot of people. And sweet fried plantains, they give you this perfect sweet contrast to the savory, spicy rice. And a simple little side salad with lettuce, tomato, and onion just adds a fresh, crunchy bite that cuts right through all that richness. And this right here really gets to the heart of it all. For Ghanaians, and especially for those who are living far from home, making a pot of jollof is really an act of reconnection. It's the smell of home, it's the taste of a celebration, and it's a delicious way to pass down that culinary heritage from one generation to the next. At the end of the day, a recipe is just a list of instructions. But what makes Ghanaian jollof so incredibly special is the story behind it all. The history, the rivalries, the family traditions, and those little personal touches that every single cook adds. It's a dish that's just alive with culture. So the real question is, when you make it, what story is your pot gonna tell?